Cavite Mutiny. The Cavite Mutiny, also known as the 1872 Cavite Revolt, was an uprising of Filipino soldiers and workers in the Spanish colonial government arsenal in Cavite, Philippines on January 20, 1872. The arsenal was led by Sergeant Lamadrid and Corporal Gomez, who were both Filipino soldiers in the Spanish colonial army. The mutineers were demanding for reforms in the Spanish colonial government, such as expulsion of the friars and establishment of the secular government. The mutiny was quickly suppressed by the Spanish colonial authorities, and the leaders were arrested and executed. The Spanish authorities also used the mutiny as a pretext to suppress the growing nationalist movement in the Philippines, leading to the persecution of many Filipino intellectuals and activists. The Cavite Mutiny is considered to be a significant event in Philippine history as it marked the beginning of the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule. The event helped to galvanize the nationalist movement in the Philippines, and it inspired many Filipino intellectuals and activists to work toward the goal of Philippine independence. Up until now, there are still uprising debates on whether which version was accurate and what happened during that time that led to a revolt. Was it the Filipino version that yields innocence to the martyr friars who were executed, or the Spanish version that clamored to be regarded? So, those are the first-hand accounts that our findings will be based on. Then we have the secondary source written by John N. Schumacher, S.J. He was a Filipino Jesuit historian and educator known for his work exploring the Catholic clergy's role in the 1896 Philippine Revolution in revolutionary clergy, and one of his articles that will support our findings is the Cavite Mutiny Toward a Definitive History, which it was published by Ateneo de Manila University.
These are some of the prominent people who got involved or related to Cavite Mutiny. First, you have the Gumburza. These are three of priests who were falsely accused of mutiny by the Spanish colonial authorities in the Philippines in the 19th century. The acronym that represents the surnames are Priest Mariano Gomez, Jose Apolonio Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, who were executed on February 17, 1872. Next, we have Ferdinand Lamadrid. He was a mestizo sergeant who led the mutiny after Spanish authorities subjected his co-soldiers at the engineering and artillery corps to personal taxes from which they have previously been exempted. And lastly, Carlos Maria de la Torre y Navacerrada. He was a Spanish soldier and politician. He served as Governor-General of the Philippines from 1869 to 1871 and is considered to be the most beloved of the Spanish Governors-General ever assigned in the Philippines. The reforms of Governor-General Carlos Maria de la Torre y Navacerrada that endeared him to the educated Filipinos were the abolishment of censorship of the press, removal of flogging as punishment, and solving the problem of agrarian unrest in Cavite. Now, these are just some of the people mentioned in the event who holds a significant role in the mutiny as one of the important highlights of our Philippine history.
Hi, my name is Paul Gabriel Caparas. Our group has come up with 5 different claims which supports the Filipino perspective of the Cavite Mutiny in 1872. These claims are: number 1, the prohibition of the construction of the School of Arts and Trades was due to Izquierdo and the friars' fear of losing power once the Filipino people became educated enough. Number 2, the event that took place in Cavite on 1872 was a revolt due to the soldiers and arsenal workers' dissatisfaction towards the policies that Governor General Izquierdo enforced. Number 3, it is not true that the mutiny was a planned separatist revolution against the Spanish sovereignty. Number 4, the 3 martyred priests, Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora, were not the masterminds nor even involved in the Cavite Mutiny of 1872. And lastly, the people responsible for planning the revolt was Maximo Inocencio, Crisanto de los Reyes, and Enrique Paraiso. Now, let us delve further into the details of these 5 claims.
Good day, everyone. So, I'm here to explain and prove my part of the claims with regards to Cavite Mutiny. The prohibition of the construction of the School of Arts and Trades was due to Izquierdo and the friars' fear of losing power once the Filipino people became educated enough. The following are the sources that support this claim. So first, this is an article written by Dr. Trinidad Tavera, in which, according to him, Izquierdo's first official act was to prohibit the founding of the School of Arts and Trades, which was being organized by the efforts and funds raised by natives of standing in the community, but the founding of which did not tally with the views of the religious orders. Governor Izquierdo believed that the establishment of the new school was merely a pretext for the organization of a political club, and he not only did not allow it to be opened, but made a public statement accusing the Filipinos who had charge of the movement. Then the second article is written by the Governor General Rafael Izquierdo himself in his official report on Cavite Mutiny. So according to him, there existed in Manila a junta or center that sought and found followers, and that as a pretext they had established a society for the teaching of arts and trades. It has also been said that this center or junta received inspiration from Madrid, where newspaper of advanced ideas flourish. To sustain them, subscriptions are locally solicited. In effect, newspapers such as El Eco Filipino were sent here from Madrid, which were distributed by persons now imprisoned, whose articles thundered against everything that can be found here. Due to the movement towards liberal ideas in Europe, many of the friars began to worry that if the same were to happen in the Philippines, their power and position may be soon put into obscurity. Dr. Tavera claims that it is due to this fact that the Spanish rulers at the time pushed against the Filipinos' effort towards progress in terms of education and general learning, such as the building of School of Arts and Trades. The building of the said school did not proceed because, according to Dr. Trinidad Tavera, the Spanish friars and the Governor General Izquierdo were frightened that the Filipinos should have wisdom and knowledge that they may also lose their power, so they take action to prevent it. They used the revolt as an excuse and informed the Madrid government that the Filipinos revolted because they wanted to conquer the management of the Spanish in the country and achieve independence from them, whom the Spanish kingdom immediately believed to do nothing, and an investigation into the incident took place in Cavite in 1872. Thus, the Cavite Mutiny paved way for the Spanish authorities to frame the 3 priests as the instigators.
I am Ronald Quillosa. I am here to report to you. The event that took place in Cavite on 1872 was a revolt due to the soldiers and arsenal workers' dissatisfaction towards the policies the Governor General Izquierdo enforced. From time immemorial, the workmen in the arsenal Cavite and in the barracks of the artillery and engineering corps had been exempt from the payments of the tribute tax and from obligation to work certain days each year on public improvements. General Izquierdo believed the time opportune for abolishing these privileges and ordered that in the future all such workmen should pay tribute and labor on public improvements. This produced great dissatisfaction among the workmen affected, and the men employed in the arsenal at Cavite went on strike, but yielding to pressure and threats made by the authorities, they subsequently returned to their labors. So, according to Dr. Trinidad Tavera, on January 20, 1872, a group of 200 soldiers, arsenal laborers, and Cavite residents, led by Sergeant Lamadrid, rose up in arms and assassinated the commanding officer and all Spanish officers in the area. The incident occurred as a result of the imposition of taxes on workers and soldiers, as well as the provision of pola and servicio, or forced labor, by which they were informally exempted, or in other words, it is a labor issue. Under Carlos Maria de la Torre liberal leadership, he reaped praise to fellow Spanish liberals as well as to well-educated and the resident of Cavite. It is also clear that with the fall of the Republic of Spain was the return of the King of Spain in 1870. With the new elected king, so de la Torre was also replaced as the Governor General in Cavite by Rafael D. Izquierdo, the one who ruined de la Torre's works and returned the leadership of the friars. It was only in Izquierdo's ruling system that people revolted to express their dissatisfaction with the policies mentioned.
So good day everyone, I am Rejoy Eve G. Galano and I'm gonna discuss the third argument, which is it is not true that a mutiny was a planned separatist revolution against Spanish sovereignty. So according to Dr. Trinidad Vera, announced by the central government in south of Madrid that they intended to remove power of the friars, intervene in civil government and management of educational institution, which prompted the friars to resort to violent methods so that they can maintain their power in the Philippines. So according to Dr. Taveira, this uprising among the soldiers in Cavite was used as a powerful lever by the Spanish residents and by the friars. So during the time that General La Torre was a chief executive in the Philippine island, the influential Filipinos did not hesitate to announce their hostility to the religious orders, and the central government in Madrid has announced its intention to deprive the friars in these islands of all powers, of intervention in matter of civil government, and of the direction of management of the university. Also, according to Dr. Tavera, it was due to the fact and promises that the Filipinos had a great hopes of an improvement in the affairs of their country. So while the friars, on the other hand, feared that their power in the colony would soon be completely a thing of the past. Also, according to him, that the persecution which began under the Governor Izquierdo were based on the false assumption that the Filipino people were desirous of independence. So the main narrative Governor General Izquierdo subscribed to is his belief that the Cavite Mutiny was not a mere revolt, but a large-scale revolution that they have carefully planned for a long time, designed to overthrow the Spanish government in the Philippines. But Dr. Tavera disagrees with this idea and says the workmen were only hoping to fight against the hardships and injustices they were experiencing because of Izquierdo's rule. So Dr. Tavera claims was never a plan for separatism, and the people did not even have an urgent reason to do so. So the reason being the ex-Governor General La Torre having a positive tie with the Filipino during his time as a leader. According to Kalingo, Mexico declared independence in 1850 and one of another. Spanish colonies in South America were lost. So the revolution and the new post-constitution in Spain opened it to liberal ideas of liberty and equality. So in 1869, the Suez Canal was opened to shorten travel time from Europe to Manila from 3 months to 32 days. In a rush of a new world of Germans, French, British, and East Coast American investors, merchants, teachers, scholars, sugar plantations, factories, and dangerous ideas. So Filipino operates last become richer, better educated in Spanish administrative, and argued with the friars. So due to the fact that Filipinos have become educated just like the Spanish friars, they were also seeking positions in the parish. So in order that the Spanish friars could not be expelled and the position could not be given by the Filipino priest, the Spanish friars used it to show off the attacking of sovereignty of Spain in the archipelago to not give the will of Gumburza to allow Filipino priests to position themselves in church in our country.
Claim 4. The three martyred priests, Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora, were not the masterminds nor involved in the Cavite Mutiny in 1872. A careful study of the history and documents of that time brings to light the part which the religious orders played in that sad drama. According to Dr. Trinidad Tavera, the Spanish friars rebuked that the masterminds of the revolt were the three martyred secular priests, Father Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, or better known as Gumburza. The truth is that they were not the mastermind of the Cavite revolt in 1872, because what they intend or promote is the secularization movement. According to Chua 2013, they just used the name of Father Burgos to persuade people to the bloody Cavite Mutiny, varied things that Gumburza promoted in those times, and they are not member or a mastermind of the Cavite Uprising in 1872. The Gumburza priests were known for promoting the secularization movement, which was a cause that the friars didn't like. Because of this, the priests were framed and was accused of being masterminds of the Cavite Mutiny. Documents about the incidents later show that the priests were not involved at all with the revolt. Jacinto Zamora was one of the proponents of secularization involved in the revolt because when his home was raided, he was caught by a letter stating a grand reunion. Our friends are well provided with powder and ammunition. Zamora loves cards, and the invitation is the code of their bandits for gambling money because gambling is the reason why he is a victim of mistaken identity. The card game is called Pangigi, and that is a code of Pangigi players.
Hello again. Now, for claim number 5, the people responsible for planning the revolt was none other than Maximo Inocencio, Crisanto de los Reyes, and Enrique Paraiso. According to Pidad Pugay, there is no data to prove that the three martyred priests were the masterminds of the uprising at Fort San Felipe. And additionally, according to a newly discovered study published by a Jesuit historian, Jean Schumacher, on the extensive account sent by Governor Izquierdo to the overseas minister, it accepts his characterization of the revolt as a frustrated separatist revolution while rejecting his conclusions as to the instigators of the revolt. Rather, it points to the real authors who escaped execution because of their Masonic ties to Izquierdo. But that's just one part of the document gathered by Schumacher. The Spanish friars and Governor General Izquierdo accused the three priests, Padre Gomez, Padre Burgos, and Padre Zamora, also known as Gumburza, who were martyred and hanged, of being the masterminds behind the revolt, when in fact, according to General Izquierdo's own report, the real masterminds behind the revolt were Inocencio de los Reyes and Enrique Paraiso. Tavera sadly confirmed that the Madrid government came to believe that the scheme was true without any attempt to investigate the real facts or extent of the alleged revolution reported by Izquierdo and the friars. Now that we have discussed our claims, let us now proceed to the credibility of the Spanish narrative. When working with multiple materials, it is important to examine the background of the source's author. In this case, the author of the Spanish version of the events in Cavite, Montero y Vidal, was labeled by many historians as utterly biased, considering he was normally known as a good historian. So much so that Dr. Trinidad Pardo de Tavera accused Vidal of deliberately obscuring the facts and intentionally excluded many important details as he placed in his account about the events. It was also pointed out how he was suddenly very prejudiced when it came to the recital of the Cavite Mutiny, when his works usually contained transparency. Based on these claims, it wouldn't be absurd to say that Vidal's version of the events was designed to push a certain narrative, which is evident when we observe his disregard of the Filipino people's situation at that time. As mentioned previously, the Cavite Mutiny was utilized as a catalyst to paint the Philippines in a bad light, so that the Spanish authority could justify their excessive use of hostility and prejudice in their rule. Montero y Vidal reinforced this narrative and forced upon the Cavite arsenal workmen accusations such as the liberal movement in Europe and the dethroning of the secular power in Spain as some of many factors which motivated them to stage a revolt. However, he did not take into account the hardships that these men and many other people experienced under Governor General Izquierdo's cold-blooded leadership. Lastly, Dr. Tavera also labels the Spanish historian's narrative as unsupported by documentary evidences. Additionally, the secondary source used in this presentation indicates that the records of the trials still hasn't been found in the Philippine National Archives and was even declared lost by the Spanish government. The lack of supporting evidence, compounded with Montero y Vidal's bias, further diminishes his credibility on this subject matter.
Hi everyone, I am Fatima Nurmila J. Sakilan and I am one of the reporters who will be debunking the Spanish narrative. So, the Spanish historian's exaggeration of information. A noticeable details in Vidal's version of the event is the perpetration of the idea that the revolt was already planned at an earlier date and was meant to attack the Spanish sovereignty in the Philippines. This narrative is an overstatement of what is otherwise a mere mutiny pushing against the unnecessary hostility of the Governor General Izquierdo to the Filipinos. Based on the information at hand, the Spanish regime was looking for reasons that they can fault the Philippines with, reinforcing their chokehold upon the Filipino people. They took advantage of the Cavite Mutiny to make it seem like they needed to harsher to stop the Philippines' rebellion against them. All of this lines up with the biases found in Vidal's version of the 1972 Cavite Mutiny. So, Vidal's version of the mutiny is one-sided only, which the Governor General is throwing all the blames the Filipino to save face, instead of taking the blame of revoking some of the privileges like prohibited of construct of school because he is scared of losing power once the Filipino is educated enough. Vidal also said that the mutiny is pre-planned by the Filipino to overthrow the Spanish regime and to install a new hari or king. This information is from an anonymous sender that told the Governor General, and because of this, they fought the Philippines and murdered the three priests, which is the Gamburza, who they said were the ones who orchestrate the mutiny. And they did this because to prevent the upcoming rebellion.
So therefore, we conclude, according to Dr. Tavera's account, that the incident was nothing more than a plain mutiny of the laborers in Cavite Arsenal, resulting to the dissatisfaction of the tribute that were charged to their salaries by which they were formerly exempted. Also, he also allusively blamed Governor General Izquierdo methods of governance, such as the removal of the tax exemption and other privileges for both new and old employees of the arsenal. He also believed that the Spanish friars and Izquierdo used the Cavite Mutiny as a powerful lever by magnifying it as a full-blown conspiracy involving not only the native army but also included residents of Cavite and Manila, and more importantly, the native clergy to overthrow the Spanish government in the Philippines.
Tavera believes that the fear of losing their power is what prompted the friars to latch on to drastic measures in order to maintain their position in the Philippines. This drastic measure equates to taking advantage of the Cavite incident and presenting it to the Spanish government as a vast conspiracy organized throughout the archipelago with the goal of destroying Spanish sovereignty. And, in an unfortunate turn of events, the Madrid government accepted the narrative without any attempt to ascertain the extent of the alleged revolution, let alone confirm whether or not the facts presented to them were even legitimate. All of which eventually led to the unjust execution of the three martyr priests who were labeled as the instigators of the revolt. In the end, Dr. Pardo Tavera's accounts of the events supports the Filipino perspective, heavily disagreeing with what Montero y Vidal and Izquierdo's version of events narrate.